Look up at the night sky. Count the stars if you can. You cannot. They are too many, too far, too old. The Milky Way alone contains somewhere between 200 billion and 400 billion stars. Your brain hears that number and instinctively places it in a category labeled bigger than anything on Earth. Mountains are big, oceans are deep, but stars, those are the things that make Earth feel small. And then someone tells you that there are more trees standing on this planet right now than there are stars in that galaxy. And your brain says no, absolutely not. That cannot be true, but it is, and not by a little, by a factor of nearly 8. Let us get the numbers straight because they matter here. In 2015, a team of researchers at Yale University led by ecologist Thomas Crowther published a landmark study in the journal Nature. They wanted to do something that had never been done with any real precision before. They wanted to count the trees on Earth, not estimate, not project, count. They pulled together data from over 422,000 forest plots spread across every inhabited continent. They combined that ground-level data with high-resolution satellite imagery from multiple space agencies. They ran the combined information through the most comprehensive tree density models ever constructed, and after months of calculation, they arrived at a number. 3.04 trillion, 3 trillion trees, not billion, trillion. Now put that number next to the Milky Way. The most widely accepted current estimate for the number of stars in our galaxy sits around 200 billion. Some models push it to 400 billion depending on how you count dim red dwarfs and other faint stellar objects that are hard to detect. Let us be generous. Let us give the galaxy every benefit of the doubt and say 400 billion stars. That means Earth, this one small rocky planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star on the edge of an average spiral galaxy, has roughly 7.5 times more trees than that entire galaxy has stars. 7.5 times. That is not a rounding error. That is not a technicality. That is a gap so large it should rearrange how you think about abundance on this planet. But here is where it gets even more surprising. Before Crowther's study, the most commonly cited estimate for the number of trees on Earth was around 400 billion, roughly one tree for every star in the galaxy. That number had been floating around the scientific literature since the early 2000s. It felt poetic, balanced, like the universe had arranged some kind of elegant equilibrium between what grows on the ground and what burns in the sky. Crowther's team shattered that number. The real figure was almost 8 times higher. We had been underestimating the trees beneath our feet by trillions, not millions, not billions, trillions. How is that possible? How could we have gotten it so wrong for so long? The answer is deceptively simple. Forests are incredibly difficult to count. They are dense. They overlap. Their canopies hide smaller trees beneath. They exist in places humans rarely visit and sometimes cannot easily reach. The deep boreal forests of Siberia stretch for thousands of kilometers across terrain that sees almost no human foot traffic. The understory layers of the Amazon are so thick that satellites cannot see every trunk from above. The scattered woodlands of sub-Saharan Africa look like savanna from orbit, but support millions of individual trees at ground level. Remote sensing technology improved dramatically by the early 2000s, but it took someone actually going to the painstaking effort of combining 400,000 ground-level surveys with satellite data to see the full picture. Science, it turns out, sometimes needs a second look at things everyone assumed were already understood. So where exactly are all these trees? About 1.3 trillion of them live in tropical and subtropical forests. That is the largest share by far. The Amazon basin alone holds an estimated 390 billion trees, representing roughly 16,000 different species. About 600 billion trees are in the boreal forests of the north, stretching in a vast green belt across Russia, Canada, Finland, and Scandinavia. These boreal forests are some of the most carbon-dense ecosystems on the planet. The rest of Earth's trees are scattered through temperate zones, drylands, savannas, and urban areas. Russia alone holds more than 600 billion trees. Brazil has around 390 billion. Canada, the United States, and China each have more than 200 billion. The trees are not hiding. We just were not counting them with the right tools until very recently. Now let us pause and think about what a single tree actually does. Because a tree is not just wood and leaves standing in one place waiting to be counted. A mature large tree produces enough oxygen in one day for roughly 2 to 4 people to breathe for 24 hours. It absorbs around 22 kilograms of carbon dioxide every year. Its root system holds soil in place and prevents erosion. Its canopy intercepts rainfall and reduces the speed at which water hits the ground, which means less flooding. Its trunk, branches, and leaves provide shelter, food, and nesting sites for birds, insects, fungi, mammals, and microorganisms. One tree is not one thing. It is an ecosystem, and 3 trillion of them working together form a planetary life support system that has been running for hundreds of millions of years. And they are not just sitting there passively. They are talking. Suzanne Simard, a forest ecologist at the University of British Columbia, spent over 20 years conducting field experiments that proved trees communicate through underground fungal networks. She published her foundational findings in the journal Nature in 1997 and has continued building on them ever since. She called the network the Wood Wide Web. Through hair-thin fungal threads called mycorrhizae, trees share nutrients like carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus with their neighbors. They send chemical warning signals when attacked by insects or disease, allowing nearby trees to activate their own defense systems before the threat reaches them. Mother trees, the oldest and largest individuals in a forest, actively recognize their own seedlings and preferentially feed them extra resources through these underground connections. A forest is not a collection of lonely competitors fighting for sunlight. It is a community, a network, an information-sharing system with 3 trillion members, all connected by threads thinner than a human hair. The oldest known individual tree on Earth is a bristlecone pine growing in the White Mountains of eastern California. Its name is Methuselah. It is over 4,850 years old. It was alive when the Great Pyramid of Giza was being constructed. It was alive when cuneiform writing was being developed in Mesopotamia. It has been growing, one ring at a time, in the same patch of high-altitude rocky desert for nearly 5,000 years. Its exact location is kept secret by the United States Forest Service to protect it from vandals and over-enthusiastic tourists. And it is still alive today, still adding rings, still growing. The trees do not just outnumber the stars. Some of them have been standing since before the invention of the alphabet. But here is the part of this story that should make you uncomfortable. Despite having 3 trillion trees on this planet, we're cutting them down at a rate that should concern every person alive. According to Crowther's own follow-up analysis published alongside the original 2015 study, the world loses approximately 10 billion net trees per year. 10 billion. That is roughly 1 tree per living human per year. Global replanting and natural regrowth offset about 5 billion of those losses. That still leaves a net deficit of roughly 5 billion trees annually. At that pace, within a few generations, the number will have dropped significantly. Not in 1,000 years, in a few human lifetimes. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations publishes a global forest resources assessment every 5 years. Their most recent data shows that between 1990 and 2020, the world lost approximately 420 million hectares of forest. That is an area slightly larger than the entire European Union. Gone in 30 years. Some of that decline has slowed in recent years. Large-scale reforestation programs in China, India, and parts of Europe have added measurable tree cover back to those regions. But in the tropics, particularly the Amazon, the Congo Basin, and Southeast Asia, the clearing continues at an alarming pace. Most of it is driven by agriculture, cattle ranching, palm oil plantations, soybean farming. The same forces that feed the global economy are dismantling the forests that make the atmosphere breathable. There is a painful irony in all of this. The more we learn about what trees do for us, the faster we seem willing to remove them. A 2019 study published in the journal Science by Jean-François Bastin and colleagues found that global tree restoration is one of the single most effective strategies available for combating climate change. Their research estimated that there is room on this planet for an additional 0.9 billion hectares of tree canopy. That is roughly the area of the entire United States. If those trees were planted and allowed to mature, they could capture and store approximately 205 gigatons of carbon. That is roughly 2/3 of all the carbon dioxide humans have pumped into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution began. 2/3. From trees, from the same organisms that already outnumber the stars. So the next time someone tells you there are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way, do not let that fact wash over you like a piece of trivia you hear at a party and forget by morning. Do not file it away and move on to the next interesting thing on your screen. Let it change how you see the ground beneath your feet. Every sidewalk tree you walk past without a glance. Every forest edge you drive by on the highway. every patch of green on a satellite image of this planet. You are looking at something that outnumbers a galaxy, something that produces the air you breathe, something that communicates in chemical signals through fungal threads underground, something that may have been standing in that exact spot since before your language existed. You have spent your whole life looking up at the sky, searching for something vast and incomprehensible. But the most staggering numbers on this planet are not above you. They are not in the stars. They are in the trunks and branches and roots that have been here all along, quietly doing the work of keeping everything alive. Right now, 3 trillion times over, and counting down.